Hey guys, welcome back to the shop. So next up is a bathroom vanity. It's a commission piece, and I'll put a picture up here, kind of show you what it looks like. But my picture here is barely above a bathroom drawing. I'm still working through some of the details with the client, but we need to get going on this because I'll be heading back out on the road soon for work. I'm also excited to say that this one is a sponsored piece. My local hardwood dealer, Glacier Hardwoods, was gracious enough to sponsor this piece, and I'm excited to work with them. They're really great guys down there. So, moving up, I've got a couple of pieces 8/4 over here I'll show you in a minute, and the legs are 3x3. So instead of ordering, some custom lumber, we're going to go ahead and laminate up 2 pieces of 8/4 to get that. The way that the vanity sits in the bathroom, you're never going to see those edges anyway, so it just made more sense to go ahead and laminate that up. Let me go ahead and switch this camera around and I'll kind of show you what I've got for layout on that 8/4, and then we'll get over to milling some lumber. Okay, so unfortunately this stuff is always really, really hard to see on video. The legs will be 2 pieces each in 8/4 laminated together, and then the seam side will face the edges or the ends because they butt up against a wall and you're never going to see that anyway. So I selected 8/4 here that putting the 2 pieces together in the same board so that color and grain match should be pretty good. I'm going to try to get rid of as much of this sap material as I can, but the client is perfectly okay with keeping a little bit of that. And I've omitted the knots and things where I could, but there will be a couple that will have to come back in epoxy fill, but that's not a big deal. So, and the rest of this lumber here is all for rails and stiles and things of that, and we'll get to that when we get there. So yeah, next up we're going to go ahead and get this stuff broke down and get ready for the milling process. Okay, all glued up. I had to go a little bit smaller than what I wanted. It won't be a lot smaller, but it will be a little smaller. So we'll see how much I actually get when I get them all squared up and get them out of clamps. So that'll be next. All right, last thing I do tonight is I'm just going to go ahead and fill in a couple of these knots that needed a little work. West Systems epoxy with about 2 or 3 drops of trans tint dye. Okay, now that the legs are pretty much ready to go, they're still probably just a smidgen long, and I'll trim them to final just before we use them. Also, out of that 8/4 stock, cut some pieces for the lower rails, and these are still oversized. But next I'm going to get all the rails and the cabinet frames out of this 4/4 stock. I'm going to mill everything oversized, but I'm not going to show it on camera. It's exactly the same process as we did for the legs. So I'm just going to rough cut these out and start some of this milling process. Okay, so there you go. I got all the 3/4 material milled up. This section's cut to final length. The tricky sections are these, the ones with the notches, and that's all it is just a notch to accept that piece down there. So next up, I'm going to go ahead and make another section just like this. And then we'll get after the domino and start dry fitting it together. I don't want to glue it up yet because we have to come back and add plywood case sides and bottoms to these 3 individual cases. Okay, so there we go. It's just a dry fit. Things don't line up perfectly because it's just a dry fit, but everything is cut the same. As I batched out a part for one, I batched it out for another. Something that I didn't anticipate was in the notch, you can't get the domino in there. So I came back in and I actually added a couple of pocket screws to get the in place of the domino. I just put a couple of pocket screws in there, and that's going to be fine. That lower shelf is going to ride through there. You're never going to see it. It's on the inside. I was okay with that. So anyways, next up, tomorrow morning, we're going to come in and start, get the dado stack put into the saw, and we'll start grooving for the plywood panels that go in this. And once all those grooves are in place, then we'll dry fit and measure for the final sizes of those panels and get those cut. So that'll be up tomorrow, but for now, the frames are in place. I'm pretty happy with how they turned out. I like the way the grain transitions across there without a cut. And these little bit of gaps here, they'll close up once we get glue and clamps on them. So yeah, I'm kind of happy with how they turned out. So see you in the morning, and we'll get going on some grooving. Next up, now that I got these side panels, the frames constructed, we still have to groove them for the panels and all that, but I need to locate where everything is at on the legs so we can get this dry fit. I used a couple of blocks for this bottom rail just to give me the equal spacing off of the bottom, and of course this still gets notched for the slat shelf and all that. But this is just a measure, just figuring out exactly where all of these dominoes go. And I think I'm going to do 4 on each side. I think that will be more than sufficient. So I get a mark there and a mark here. But this mark has to get carried over to the top because everything is going to reference off of this, off this show or this outside surface. And I want to cut all of these dominoes first in the frames, which means I have to assemble everything like this and locate it. And then I'll come back and I'll reset the domino to give me that 1/8 reveal or setback to inset each one of the panels. From there, I think we can get this thing dry fit. Now that all the 3/4 stuff has the dominoes cut, I've readjusted the height to add about 1/8 of an inch, which will be my setback. And I'm just going to go through and do all the legs, and we should be ready to dry fit this. Well, there's the first dry fit. 36 dominoes in total. This allows me to go ahead and start figuring out where all the grooves for the plywood go and get measurements based off the actual piece. So that's what we're going to take off next. I'm probably going to start with those lower rails and get those set up to take the slats. And then, yeah, we'll be loading up the dado stack probably here soon and starting on some grooves. Next up, we're going to cut all the dados on the inside, and I've marked those out while I was dry assembled, just to dummy proof it for me for where the dados go. I have my dado stack set, my 3/4 dado stack set to about 3/8 deep. I've run a test piece so I know everything works good, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut all these dados where I can so I can get this put back together, and then mark where I'm going to have to notch for the legs for the shelves to fit in. So that's where we're at. Okay, so for those setter stiles, I have to make an adjustment to the fence, and I'll have to do two different setups for this, one for one side of it and one for the other side of it. So I'm set up for that now, and I've run a test piece just to make sure that it fits really well, and I'm going to go ahead and cut that dado. Okay, the last of my 3/4 dados are in that top rail, and it's because those partitions will go all the way to the top. So this isn't exactly my favorite cut, but I've set up my miter gauge here, and I didn't change the height of the blade, and we're just going to run this through, and I've marked exactly where they got to go. So I'll run it through, and then I'll flip it around and do the other side, and then do the other one, and that should be it for the 3/4 inch dados. All right, so before I switch my dado stack around to work on the back panel and the side panels, because I have to groove those insides, I've got just a lot of little parts laying around. The front panel is essentially done. Obviously it still needs sanding and things like that, but I can go ahead and glue this piece up and take a whole bunch of parts and turn it into one and just make my life easier. So last thing I'm going to do tonight is go ahead and glue up this front panel and leave it sit for the night. Okay guys, so there's the front panel all glued up. It is nice to have some long clamps and a few of them. I did have a couple of dominoes that exposed in the grooves, and that'll be okay. I went ahead and glued them in place, and I will come back tomorrow and just clean those up with a chisel a little bit, so they don't interfere with the plywood when it slides in. This one's getting a little long in the tooth, so we're going to wrap it up for this one. I was hoping to do this in one, just a little bit more detailed than I would have liked. So yeah, so until the next one, guys, take care.